wins, you always turn up, and you make the game what it is. So we think you deserve a better betting experience. Every time you bet with Fanatic Sportsbook, win or lose, you get up to 5% of your wager back in fan cash. Spend it on jerseys, fan gear, bonus bets, and more. And for a limited time, bet and get up to $1,000 in bonus bets over 10 days. Welcome to the most rewarding sportsbook.
This may be a life changer.
The best of the best is a pretty damn big deal.
All walks of life abound in this one game. It's just amazing.
It's special.
It's a different level of excitement. It's a different level of adrenaline.
This is the show.
Surreal. It's wonderful. It's the mecca for tournaments.
Good afternoon, racing fans. Once again, welcome to Hawthorne Racecourse for this Sunday afternoon of Thoroughbred Action. Jim Miller and Emily Gullikson up here in our mezzanine level studio on what's been a rainy Sunday. It worked out good for training this morning, Emily. All the trainers got in, got their workers done before the rain started. Rained for about the last 4 hours, but it looks like it's going to taper off as races approach, too.
Yeah, it looks like it's lightening up, as you said. I'm following the radar. I've been watching it all day, and it does seem like sometimes it can be a little bit questionable, but it does look like it's going to clear up. And then coming in, I just walked out towards the track just to see what it looks like. It doesn't look too bad, all things considered. So, and this track usually plays fair. There's not a lot of wind or any other factors to come into play. And obviously, as we go through, if there are any subtle biases or things like that, we'll keep people posted. But the cards stay together pretty well, and a lot of these races are really good and really competitive, including the feature. Yeah, feature's a very good race. The work all week handicap field of 7 for that race. As you mentioned, this track, it drains very well. They did a good job of getting it sealed right after training, and so a lot of the water just staying on top, and as you'll see, the floats going across just kind of pushes the water down, and because there's that crown in the center of the track, and that little bit of grading there to just kind of allow that water to wash right off. So if the rain does stay away, expect a track that is drying out. It will be an off track, though, all day long. Now, before we jump into today's card, looking back at yesterday, jockey Alexis Centeno had 3 winners on the card, but the really cool thing, 2 trainers in back-to-back races had their very first training victories. Daniel Simonovich, and then followed up by Irvin Moreno. You don't see it every day. You don't see one trainer getting their first victory every day, but for it to happen in back-to-back races was pretty cool. Yeah, and congrats to both of those trainers, and they've both been knocking on the door of getting a lot of horses that have been running second and thirds and just getting some trips along the way. So, you know, you love to see it. Both those horses were spotted well and ran to it, so congrats to those connections. Yeah, and it was good to be on the turf course yesterday. We had some really good competitive racing on the grass, but again, today, everything on the main track. We're going to rattle through the 9 races here so I can get upstairs and start memorizing once again. Hopefully I can get all those horses right as they're running around the slot. You did awesome yesterday. I thought the calls were great. It was excellent. For somebody that doesn't do it every day, it turned out okay. I actually half sounded like I knew what I was doing, so not too bad. And then we'll put all the pre-race analysis in your capable hands once again. And you and I, we talked about it yesterday. When we combined to have a horse on top, it usually works out well. It happened a couple times yesterday. One was Simonovich's winner. Yep. And then how about my tennis shoes in the last? That was a pretty good effort too. Yeah, absolutely. Just one, both actually you and I have been kind of chasing since going back to opening day and just needed the right spot and found it, and Alexis Centeno being another key to that as one of those 3 wins. Yeah, good late closing trip there for my tennis shoes to win the finale. All right, let's look through the 9 races on the sloppy track today. In the opener, we go 3/4 of a mile. 6250 maidens, a key scratch, and it was a later scratch. That's the 6. Lost Sunset is out of race number 1. From that field of 6, now your favorite is Chanel Point here. This one from the barn of a Wayne Catalano. Definitely the horse to beat. I mean, especially with Lost Sunset out in here. This one just missed a turfway in that last out. Yeah, I respect Chanel Point in here, but I'm hoping Flash It Wide Open shows a little bit of speed to keep the pace contentious and Sharp Attack as well. Yep. And with those 2, looking at the board right now, I'm going to stick with Sharp Attack on top in this race, finding some class relief out of the races in their 2 starts. Moved up here, going back to the debut, it was a higher level at Oaklawn, and then came in for the lighter, claiming tag just last week, and then caught a higher, just race part. I think this is the right spot. Is able to show tactical speed. I think actually benefits probably from the scratch more than anything in this race. Yeah, and when we agree again, we usually do pretty well. Nice. That's who I landed on too, was Sharp Attack. Like you mentioned, just tougher company in each of those last 2. Texas Hottie ran a really good race in that last out, and Peggy's Way ran a pretty good race too. You're finding things much easier, and like you mentioned, it is. It's a key scratch here. I think
Sharp Attack rates a little bit closer in race number 1 and runs a pretty solid race. Race number 2 today goes 1 mile and 70 yards, $5,000 claimers, now winners of 3 races lifetime. It's a field of 7 to line up in here. It's interesting, the 2 Slava Ukraini was entered last weekend in a sprint where the horse was going to be competitive. I think the horse is at its best so around 2 turns. I did try to defeat him with a closer, but I think Slava Ukraini will run a pretty big race.
Well, I think they're going to be tough on the front end. You know, I'm going to trust the data. I'm going to look at the plot. It looks like Slava Ukraini should have a pace advantage in here with that early speed from the inside. And as you mentioned, the connections have just been looking for the right spot for this horse. I agree. Better around 2 turns. I think it's Slava Ukraini. And who'd you go with the closer? Because
Perfumer.
Okay.
Yeah, Perfumer was the one that I ended up with. I'm just looking at that last out, because in that spot, Perfumer settled back early on. It was a strong close. It was like down the center of the track. You're going to need that pace to chase. So the key to me in the whole race is Blooming Garden on the inside. If Blooming Garden goes with Slava Ukraini, then it sets it up for a closer. If Slava Ukraini is loose, it might be all over on the front end.
Yeah, and I kind of saw it similar just in terms of if Slava Ukraini does get clear, which they should, no excuses today on that front. And then another closer that should be a price is Powerful Man, number 6. I respect Perfumer for the reason that you mentioned, big late kick. But same thing with Eyes on Deck, who's getting a lot of attention in the doubles right now. Both of them are coming off those N2 wins, and today's not that much of a big jump, but it is still something to consider from value.
And we talked about Eyes on Deck in their last out. This was a horse that was just consistently running second and coming up short. David Cohen gave the horse a really good ride in that last out, kind of got it away from the other horse so it didn't hang in the lane, and then was just able to run on by. So something definitely to look to in race number 2 and see how the track is playing, but you won't have a whole lot of tells that early in the card. So we'll be curious to see kind of just how things unfold there in race number 2. Race number 3 today, again, off the turf course, we go 6.5 on the main track. $20,000 maiden claimers, scratch the 1, Miss High and Mighty, 2, Blues Up, Greens Down, and the 7, Frothy. Frothy was going to be a very heavy favorite on the turf. With that one out, definitely changes the complexion. I ended up on Pacific View. I was going to be on that horse, turf or dirt. I just think today has to be the day for this runner.
Let's keep up our momentum, because I'm with Pacific View as well. Been waiting for this just to get that class drop. She's been running competitive races, just not quite good enough to get that win. This is the right move, and I agree. Just turf, dirt, doesn't matter, just needs the right class level, and this should be it. Has some tactical speed to stay in contact with Lightning Melody, who's probably going to try to wing it right from the start, because they have the inside now, and sit right off there and try to get the jump on Safecracker Sue, who also I think makes some sense in here as well, as we mentioned, Daniel Simonovic. Another one that I think those races at Oaklawn Park just showed a little bit more run, especially going 2 back on March 21st. She lost a race before it started, so you can draw a line through that, and I think she improves in this spot, but Pacific View on top.
The thing about Safecracker Sue, too, is this one benefits from shortening up 1/8 of a mile today, going to 1 turn. I think 6.5 furlongs will be better for Safecracker Sue than 1 mile and 70 would have been, and of course a little bit shorter field here, but I'll be curious to see. The price will come down to that one, but I'm with you. Today I think has to be the day for Pacific View in race number 3. 4th race on the card goes 3/4 of a mile, $4,000 claimers with a field of 8 to line up in this spot. Again, this is scary. We're kind of agreeing in here again. The 8, Alpine Ghost, I think if you can just put a line through that last out, and I thought that was actually a fairly tough race at that level, because we saw Breaking News come back yesterday and run pretty well in the opener. The race 2 back, I think, is going to make Alpine Ghost very tough in here.
Yeah, it was it might have just been like a taxing effort getting the win that day, and then coming back, just not in the right spot, had to rush up, was wide, and then just wasn't asked for their best late. So you kind of like that when a horse comes back, that you're like, okay, they weren't beaten as bad as if they were fully trying and just a terrible effort. So save the horse. And I think that if Alpine Ghost could actually even have a pace advantage, I think if they are assertive in here, and that could help their chances as well. Code Town to win. Oh.
Code to win.
Oh, that makes sense.
There you go.
This is why they don't put me in the announcer, and they kept me down here.
So just so you know, like my proofs upstairs, I have a bunch of dashes in any of those names, so I know, just to break that up. Yes, Code to win, like Golden Pence. Even though it seems easy, I'll put a little line through there just so we know.
There's a few that I've kind of been like, that can't possibly be right, and certainly nobody's going to say that on TV.
Right.
But yeah. So
yes,
code to win. Could end up sitting right off that first flight if Golden Pen shows early speed along with Alpine Ghost and work out a trip. And then Makamat, who ends up taking this spot. I wish they would have run yesterday. I thought Makamat fit in that spot, but fits as well here. Just going to have to make that run from a little bit further off the pace.
And that's kind of the key. I mean, they wanted to come out of that spot for this race, so they must have thought the race was easier. But yeah, the horse definitely had a shot in yesterday's race too. Has a very good shot in today's fourth as well. Fifth race on the card, and this spot we go a mile 16th. I love a mile 16th on the dirt. I like it a lot better than a mile 70, even though it's only 40 yards longer. I like the distance a lot better.
Why is that?
It's much easier for just points of call, for where they hit the quarter, where they hit the half, where they hit the
from
three-quarters.
From a call standpoint, okay. Because I was like,
yes.
I've never heard you say that before.
Yep.
So,
just for the points of call, it's a little bit easier. At the mile 70, it's a short run into that first turn. 40 yards makes a world of difference. It doesn't seem like it, but the 120 feet really does. So we'll see what happens here in the fifth if the added distance makes any difference in the outcome at all. We scratched the 9 carte blanche in here. I went to Where'd the Day Go in this spot, but it looks like you gave a little bit of a look to Mr. Charming. You're willing to overlook that last out from this one.
Yeah, I mean, the race last out, I think that today's race shape sets up better for him than the race last out. And in terms of trip and in terms of overall form, I think he's in line with number 5, Kozan Success, who's going to be the favorite in this race.
Yeah.
So if I can't really see that much of a difference between those two, and one's going to be 5-2, possibly, or shorter, who knows, you know, but it probably won't be much longer, and then, 10-1, even 8-1, you have that odds discrepancy. I would upgrade Mr. Charming just from a wagering standpoint, taking a shot that he's a little bit of an overlay, because Kozan Success also makes sense, had some tough luck, had that excuse going back to March 31st and then wheeled back and had a wide trip just 2 weeks later. So again, I think this is a good spot for them, but from a value standpoint, Mr. Charming.
Yeah, and you do have to look to the value in there for sure, because Kozan Success will be a short price. Where'd the Day Go? 2 really good races in those last couple. Watch out for looking for revenge too. The 2-horse, another Simonovich runner, who I think is just well spotted today and should be able to post an improved effort. Race 6 off the turf, a 1 mile 70 yards on the main track. $25,000 claimers. Scratch the 1, 2, 4, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 14. Sorry, not the 2. The 2's in. I'm sorry. Simple logic runs. So again, 1, 4, 7, 9, 10, 11, 14 in here. Soul Coaxing is the one I ended up with. I was going to be on this one. Turf, dirt, it didn't matter. I thought the horse was just well spotted. I think the recent races were much tougher. I think this horse is sitting on a good effort today. Did you kind of see similar for chances for Soul Coaxing to at least be in the mix in here, or did you change coming off the turf?
Well, I gave Global Empire. I thought if the races came off the turf, that he's going to be upgraded and would probably have a pace advantage, and it kind of looks the same way, and maybe it even plays against Simple Logic, and then Soul Coaxing might have to just kind of use from the inside between those two. So I think that Global Empire makes a lot of sense and definitely benefits from that surface switch, or at least to draw in, if nothing else. But the other one that could move up is number 8, Landmark Deal, who I think fits in this race as well. And he was kind of another one that, like you said, with Soul Coaxing, I was probably going to use it either way, just because this horse has had so many subtle trips. There's been intention. This is the right spot. I think that horse makes sense. So it's a tough race, and I think it's really going to I wouldn't be against Soul Coaxing. It's one of those races that, and the outcome, you wouldn't be surprised with anybody in this field. So it's going to maybe be a rider's race and come down to trip. What are you checking out over there?
I'm looking at Landmark Deal's last race, because I thought I was right, and it was. Just Landmark Deal ran third in that last race, was sent off at 7-2. It's around 2 turns, a race that came off the turf, but the winner was Bialia, who was actually back in the stake today in race number 7, and they're going to take their shot there. So Landmark Deal, and Steve Manley had said turf or dirt. He was coming with this one to run regardless. Silver Quarters, I think, is just a little bit more. He's searching a little bit more for turf for that one. But Landmark Deal is the horse that I picked second in here. Global Empire is the horse that I picked third. Soul Coaxing ended up with on top. But yeah, I was hoping for a couple more to kind of stay in the race, just for the right pace complexion more than anything else. But again, we'll have a little bit better idea how the track's playing at that point and kind of see what happens when we get up to the 6th, and if it's a drying out racetrack as well. Race 7 is the feature of the Work All Week Handicap, 3/4 of a mile in here. It is a field of 7. Ouvre was not deterred by the amount of weight put on that one's back last week. Today it's WW Hotshot, not carrying quite as much, but 124 compared to some others in this field. This horse has been very good though, and WW Hotshot is the one to beat. there's other pace in the race, but the thing is, the other pace is Scott Becker horses too. I don't expect that they're going to duke it out either.
This race, I was trying to look at your paper. I was going to cheat off your picks because this race is so tough. I found this race so tough because, you start with WW Hotshot and you're like, okay, he's the horse to beat. And then you look at the pace scenario and you're like, Fast Jack could keep him honest on the front end. And Richie's on a roll. He's on the outside. He's going to keep him a little bit honest too. And wow, Megan's Honor's okay. Megan's Honor can sit right off those. It's like, and then you start going through, you're like, okay, Huey Attacks won his State Bred Stakes race.
Right.
So is Bialea. Maybe he has to come from a little bit further out of it. And then Bureau's a much better horse right now, and he's going to get overlooked because his Hawthorne record, it doesn't look that great, but he was a different horse at that time than he is now. So if you're looking at the Bureau now, you're like, he could be in the mix. This race is really tough. I could go with any in here, which would mean I'm not going to take the favorite, regardless of who it is, because I just think the race is that wide open that I'll leave it up to the board, leave it up to the picks, because you can't. I mean, who could you toss? Maybe
you can't toss anybody. Right. You can't toss anybody. The one thing that moves a horse like WW Hotshot up is just the wet track record. The horse has been solid on the off going. But you're right. Huey Tack won when in a similar position where there was a good amount of pace and an honest pace, and this one just swooped everybody. So you can't toss that one out. And Jose Rodriguez has been going so good. But he's got that one on the inside. He's got Richie's on a roll on the outside. If Richie's on a roll can stalk instead of be on the lead, he's a horse that I think could be very tough as well. So it is. It's a really intriguing race, and you're right. If WW Hotshot's a really short price, either hook it up with someone if you like the horse, or you just go elsewhere and try to find some value. But you're right. I think any of those 7 could win there.
Yeah, it's a really competitive race. It's very intriguing. A lot of storylines in there. Solid field. Yeah, solid field for sure there in race number 7. In the 8th, off the turf again, 6.5 furlongs on the main track. Allowance runners scratched to 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 9. 11 and 12. I was a little surprised Rieta came out in there. I thought Rieta was going to be actually very tough on the main track, but they are out in this spot. Opens things up a little bit. Chris Block does have the 457 in there. Do make note, David Cohen picks up the ride. It's going to be a much shorter price, but I think that's a horse that's probably sitting on a pretty big effort today. That last race was super good.
Yeah.
It might not look like it on paper, but had trouble at the start, ended up making a wide move, and it was the type that from a visual standpoint, you're like, this horse is better, and this horse is going to improve. So I think they're very live. The rider change, staying on the main track, those are all positives in here. So I upgraded 457 all around. I think maybe a danger is number 8, Allotrope.
That's right, pick second.
Yeah, from a pace standpoint, kind of moves up, could even have a pace advantage. So, if they let Allotrope go on the front end, that could be the race. But it's so tough, and sometimes these races with off the turf, different distance, what the riders are going to do at this point. Yeah.
Right, and you have to watch out for the AEs that drew in. Sense of Self was a turf horse enter, but they stay in on the main track. She Be Sheehan was entered as an MTO. They stay in, and that's a horse that I think could run in a improved race as well. But I'm with you on 457 in race number 8. Then in the finale, 12-5 claimers, high five, wager in the last, non-winners of 3. All 9 remain in right now. And looking at this race, again, this is kind of an intriguing race because I didn't really think, aside from Phillipsburg, who was going to take a lot of money, there were a lot of horses that were just maybe marginally just a notch below, but you could catch some value. I know you have a horse that you've been following for some time that you're going to stick with in here. I went to Chaos Reigns looking for an upset, but for you, My Crazy Neighbor.
Yeah, and I even read up the analysis, and I'm starting to feel a little crazy going to come back to this horse, but he keeps running well, and the race just keeps setting up, and if they're going to offer prices, then, I'm going to stick that way. And, yeah, you start with Phillipsburg, who has early speed, and is probably going to be the dominant speed in here, but that's going to force some other horses to push and to chase, and maybe that gets to Phillipsburg, like we saw in the finale yesterday, where the pace just kind of started to fall apart late. And My Crazy Neighbor has just been sitting on good races. Those allowance races were a little bit too tough, but was still running competitively, and then comes back from a competitive race, dropping down and claiming company, and I think just catches the right field in here, made that wide move last out, so has plenty of fitness.
Yeah, I picked My Crazy Neighbor third in the spot. I went to Chaos Reigns and sandwiched Phillipsburg in between those two, just searching for a little bit more of a price. We saw My Tennis Shoes come rolling in the last to catch the favorites late, so see what happens in the finale. All right, that's how we see the 9 races today. Again, sloppy on the main track. Off the turf course today for the 9 race card. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to turn it over to Emily for all of the pre-race analysis for the remainder of the day, and I'm going to sprint upstairs and start memorizing for the opener. Good luck.
fillies and mares are in the paddock for today's first race. We just had a change to the track conditions, listed as muddy, as we're still 12 minutes to the first post, and it looks like the rain has stopped, at least for now. Well, the horses are in the paddock. We'll get a look at this field of 6, just one scratch for the opener. And let's get a look at number 2, Sharp Attack. And this is a horse that both Jim and I gave a look to as that top selection in this race, going back to the debut at Oaklawn back on March 28th. Broke slow that day, but it was a higher race par, a tougher field. Looked to move up on this circuit, and that was just last week. Coming off a 51-day freshening, broke a little bit slow, had some trouble at the start, but despite the running line and finishing position, showed more run, made a middle move, so can project to move forward, especially with the timing as they're going to wheel right back. And getting a look at Sharp Attack right now makes a positive physical appearance, which you like to see, especially when the horse is coming back on shorter rest. With 5-2, there is a favorite in here with the 3 at 7-5 in Chanel Point. Chanel Point will make a return to the main track, and that was a little bit of a concern for me because the numbers on the main track weren't as strong as the numbers that were on the turf or on the synthetic, but both those races were on a fast dirt track, and we definitely don't have that today, the track conditions being muddy, so perhaps that would upgrade Chanel Point. One that we haven't seen is hiding back in that back stall. That's why we're not getting a look at the horse in the paddock, but we'll get a chance to get a look at Chanel Point on the track. Coming into this spot, we'll find a subtle change in class with the circuit switch alone, returning from that 3-month break. Currently sitting at 6-5, and just kind of based on looking at some of the pools, projects to hold favoritism until post time. Let's make a shift to the outside in number 7, Baba's Gal. Baba's Gal currently sitting at 7-2, the third choice. Makes a good appearance, getting a look at her right now. And is one that has moved up on this circuit with racing, was in a little bit tougher at Oaklawn Park, had some trouble at the start in a lot of those races, and that played a role in the outcome. Is also going a little bit shorter in the races here this season, so getting that extra half furlong along with the conditioning can be a positive. And again, I like what I'm seeing. The early money is also coming in, and that can be a positive. Also as well, she's going to shift to an outside post, first being between horses, and that could assist, especially one that's had some gait issues in the past. We'll go just to her inside in number 5, Good Magic Woman, and Good Magic Woman will make the change in distance, cutting back from the route in that most recent start, going back to April 20th. The race that was run under similar maiden conditions was the first start for the Weinbach barn, and that race shape back on April 20th was a little bit extreme as the front runner separated from the field, back down the pace on the backstretch, then opened up again. So a slight extreme race dynamic in that 4th place finish. Overall, it's going to have to get a little bit faster, but should come into this race plenty fit, coming out of that most recent longer race. And getting a look at Good Magic Woman, does have a nasal strip on today. It does appear, and that's a change I haven't seen, or a change for today's race, something I haven't noted in the past. So perhaps that is a positive. Currently sitting at 5-1, getting some support from the public. Odds shifting a little bit with the scratch, but down a little bit from the 8-1 morning line. Then we'll look at the 2 longer shot runners in this field, both at double digits. Shifting over to the inside in number 1, Flash It Wide Open, making a return from a 114-day layoff and making a first start on this circuit. We're getting a look at Sharp Attack again, just reminding us that that's the top pick right there. The 1, if we can shift back to the, yeah, there we go. Well, if you have the 3, if the 3's coming out, we can get a look. But Flash It Wide Open, making that return off the 114-day layoff, has been able to show a little bit of early speed in the past, and that was going back to her second career start back on December 22nd at the fairgrounds. It was on a fast track that day. Did have to rush a little bit before getting into a duel, lacking some finish late, but that was the better race, a most competitive race in the series. So likely to show some early speed in here, especially with that rail draw. Even if they do break a little bit slow, could see them rush out. And then were we able to get a look at the 3? There she is. So Chanel Point talked about a little bit while she was hiding back in that stall, making a return from the 3-month break and making a return to the dirt. The 2 prior dirt races, one was at Churchill Downs, coming off a 367-day layoff in maiden special weight company, broke slow that day, and then the other dirt start was at Keeneland, in for that $20,000 maiden claiming tag, raced wide that day. Both those races weren't as competitive on the dirt number-wise compared to the turf or the synthetic races. that was a little bit of a concern, but both those races were on a fast dirt track, and we're seeing the muddy conditions today, so maybe that is to our liking, and they have the tail wrapped up. Just noting that for the off track as well. We'll look through just one more in this field with number 4, Featured Power. Featured Power is another runner in this field that will make a return off a layoff. The first start back in 194 days, last seen in November at FanDuel, where she did break slow, but was one of the few times in her career running at the maiden claiming level. And going back to July of last year, it was in the second off pattern, did show a little bit more interest and run over this course under similar maiden conditions to today's race. Might need a race coming off the layoff. Just getting a look at them in the paddock at 21 to 1. We're at 7 minutes to post. With the track conditions, the horse will probably head out about 4 minutes to post. Good luck in the opener.
Again, a reminder here for race number 1 at Hawthorne. Track has been upgraded to muddy. Muddy for race number 1. Horses are walking on the track for the Sunday opener. Again, as the skies are clearing, track has now been upgraded to muddy. Muddy for race number 1. In the first, we offer Win Play Show, Exacta, Trifecta, Superfecta, Double Pick 3 and Pick 5. Wagering, Scratch the 6 Lost Sunset, the 5 Good Magic Woman, 4 pounds over. Here's your field for race number 1. The 1 is Flash It Wide Open. Flash It Wide Open, trained by Manny Perez, ridden today by Carlos Ulloa. 2 is Sharp Attack. Sharp Attack, trained by Cody Rosine. Orlando Mojica is your rider. 3 is Chanel Point. This one trained by Wayne Catalano with David Cohen aboard. 4 is Featured Power. Featured Power, trained by Hugo Rodriguez with Luis Colon. 5 is Good Magic Woman. Good Magic Woman, trained by Cheryl Weinbaugh, Angel Reyes, your rider. Scratch the 6. And the 7 is Baba's Gal. Baba's Gal, trained by Fernando Bahena, ridden today by Emmanuel Giles. There's your field of 6 for race number 1. Two minutes. Horses approaching the gate for the opener. Looking ahead today to race number 5. Race number 5 today, we have a late scratch. Scratch the 6, Unified Weekend. Race number 5. Race 5, scratch the 6, Unified Weekend. Horses approaching the gate for the opener. Horses are at the gate for the opener. First two to walk in will be Flash It Wide Open and Featured Power. Sharp Attack and Good Magic Woman are next. Good Magic Woman walks in with Sharp Attack. Last two will be Chanel Point and Baba's Gal. Chanel Point walks in. Baba's Gal lasts to load. They're all in for the opener. And they're off for the first. Sharp Attack getting away a step slowly, but Chanel Point breaks well along with a Good Magic Woman. On the outside is Baba's Girl. In between those horses, Featured Power, Sharp Attack. Now to the outside, and at the back of the pack is Flash It Wide Open. But as they head down the backside, it's going to be a battle between Good Magic Woman on the outside, Chanel Point on the inside, and Good Magic Woman emerges the length clear. Sharp Attack moving up along the inside into second now. Baba's Gal back into fourth. Break of about two back there to Featured Power, and about three more back to Flash It Wide Open. Opening quarter and 23 seconds flat as they move through the turn, and it is Good Magic Woman up by a couple of lengths. Chanel Point back there in second by two, another 2.5 to Sharp Attack. Baba's Girl to the outside of that one, then a break of about five back to Featured Power, and Flash It Wide Open at the back. But as they turn into the lane, it is Good Magic Woman, your leader. Good Magic Woman up by a head now, but Chanel Point comes back to the outside and takes over the lead, and Chanel Point now opens up there by 2 to 3 lengths. Good Magic Woman dropping back along the inside, Sharp Attack on the rail. Baba's Girl coming out, well, 3-4 wide, but it is Chanel Point that has opened up, and Chanel Point strong through the wire. Chanel Point up by about 6 or 7 lengths as they hit the wire. Going to be tight for second, but Good Magic Woman going to hold off Baba's Gal. That one followed up by Sharp Attack. In the opener, your unofficial winner was the 3, Chanel Point. Second, the 5, Good Magic Woman. Third was the 7, Baba's Gal. Fourth, the 2, Sharp Attack. 3-5-7-2, race number 1. Final time for the 3 quarters, 112.67. Turn into the winner's circle is your official winner of race number 1. That is the 3, Chanel Point. Chanel Point owned by Catalano Thoroughbreds Inc. of Wayne and Renee Catalano. Wayne Catalano, the winning trainer. David Cohen, the winning rider of Chanel Point. Chanel Point is a 4-year-old bay filly sired by Point of Entry. Out of the Fleet Alex mare, Lauren, My Chanel Girl. This one was bred in Kentucky by Vinlar Racing Stable, LLC. Race 1 is official. Here's your payouts in the first. 3-5 exacta for $1 pays 6 even. Try numbers were 3-5.